Everything's.
I keep comparing it to porn to him. I say, you look in there, in this dark little thing, people ask me questions, you're hoping there's more cute chicks out there than weirdos. And you just keep answering into this void. So that's all I remember.
Did you get to walk the floor? Have you done that yet?
No.
What is walk the floor?
There's a big floor with lots of geeks dressed in costumes trying to sell things.
Wow.
Yeah, you should go.
Don't want to walk.
Seriously, it's good.
Doesn't smell
Some really cool stuff.
So I was going to say, what do you think you guys have learned from each other this whole experience of filming the movie? What have been the biggest lessons that you've learned from him and you've learned from him?
I'd just say I got one thing from him, very disciplined. I'm not very disciplined and I think a very selfish thing to say, but I can probably do all jobs on a film set, but I have no idea how actors do what they do. And they walk on hallowed ground. I couldn't do it in a million years. And when you tell them something, they're so trusting. And believe me, my stuff can tend to look very ridiculous. And then you have somebody out there and you give them and say, look okay later. And how many times have they heard that before and seen it go wrong? And just the idea of trust from somebody like that without knowing you. And I think that's something I couldn't do. I think he did.
Yeah, we don't do that for everyone. Just for you.
Thank you.
What I've learned from Tarsem, how to keep the energy on set. One thing Tarsem did, which was fantastic, at the end of a 15-hour day, the last day of the week, he'd ask you for a 16th hour. And he keeps the energy up. And the only reason why this movie was enjoyable was because of Tarsem. And he really knows how to stir the pot in a good way and keep everything moving and keep everything fresh. And that I respect a lot. And it's a kind of skill and a talent which is required on sets. And I hope I've taken some lessons with me from it.
For Mr. Cavill, the producers were saying how you stayed on this film for a long time before it was actually greenlit. Why did you stay with the script?
Tarsem.
Thank you.
It's because of Tarsem.
I had only one guy. I would say the question isn't right to say no script. We didn't really have a script that anybody wanted to make. I would just say we only had one thing, and we had Henry. And I just said, we stick with this guy. He's the best. We only have one scene. Start writing a script around that. Gods, do they live? Do they die? Do we even have gods? Is it going to be Greek time with electricity? It was all in the air. The only one person I had was him. And so I wouldn't say that stay on a script for too long. We didn't have a script. We just stayed on a situation for too long.
What was the one scene you had?
Actually, it's not even in the movie.
No.
It's a little rowing scene in the boat. I just went and had him read it, and we met in London, and he read it, and it was perfect. And I told him, you read it shit, change it like this. He went there, and I told him, no, you read it perfect earlier. I was wrong. He went there. Moved him all around, and I just thought, he's not Man of Steel, I was saying he's Man of Copper. He's very malleable and ductile. You could beat him into any shape. So I told him, you've got a guy. Right now, he's a king's son. In the end of the movie, right now, the way he ended up, he's a peasant. So I said, you can change whatever script you want. This man will deliver. So now we work on a script. We have a guy that I want to make a movie with. So then that's why it took a year and a few months. So to answer that question, we just had a situation and a person who I just thought was the best.
On this film, or on the panel, you mentioned about your own religious beliefs, atheism, and all of your the way that you look at what's going on in this film. Can you talk about how you brought your own beliefs into this film and how you maybe evolved or didn't evolve, or your thoughts changed or didn't change?
It did. I think too little of it is left in the film, but it's still there. It's one of the main reasons I kind of went for it. As the story that I was saying was that I've been an atheist since I was 9 years old, and my mom, I blaspheme just about anything that you can think of. And I was giving my mom some crap, and she turned around about 3 years ago, and she turned around and said, how do you think you're as successful as you are if it wasn't for my praying? And I thought, now that's an interesting situation. I die and I go up there, and there is the old conventional bearded guy in the sky, and he goes like, you fuck. I've been wanting to screw you up forever, but because of this woman. And I thought, that's a situation. So then I just thought, the only thing I couldn't think of it, if gods exist, how do you justify the kind of horrors in the world? So I couldn't figure that one out. The moment I came up with the reasoning of that, and I just thought, why don't they show up in front of the White House lawn and say, take us their leader, don't be bad to each other, we exist. So once I said the question of free will trumps all, they will take anything. But if they interfere directly, you will just worship them like dogs. Your true nature, what I kept saying, which they never wanted me to keep repeating, your true nature would never come out. If, as I said, Muhammad walks through that door or Jesus through this door, I would never be able to walk into a toilet with a barely legal magazine again, because I think he existed. So I just thought it had to be taken on faith. So the question of faith came up, and I just thought if I keep that in mind and just think the gods don't interfere because they respect free will above all, your true nature would never come out if they just showed up and you just would go like a dog like that. So I started with that and just said the gods are not interfering only for one thing. They can try to, kind of like parents who know the exam and they'll keep feeding you questions from the back, but they won't tell you because you won't be prepared for life. So they're trying to help a human, but he doesn't know that the person helping him is a god. That's allowed, but you don't interfere as gods. Once those elements came in, then it became a Greek film. Although until that particular point, it was a film that had gods, and I didn't know if it was going to be Greek. It started with Greek times electricity. It started all sorts of hodgepodgey stuff, which is a bit too art housey for them. So when they told me, if you go and keep it Greek and take out the Derek Jarman elements or the elements of that one, you can have it, I didn't think it hurt, and that's how the film evolved.
How did the character of Theseus for both of you evolve during the course of the film?
He changed completely. When I went to Henry, he was the king's son. He was the king, but one element that I never liked from the original script is I think which really works for the West or actually around the globe a lot, which is you're the chosen one. I just really viscerally react against that because I just think, no, if a guy, that means, I mean, even in the East, it's such a big thing, like, karma and all that crap. It isn't it. It's just if you're really hard working, you're the right guy, that's what needs to be special, not that, your dad was the king who came in and, raped your mom in a garden. It didn't have to do with that. So all those things about gods coming, it shouldn't be that. It should just be a regular guy that wants to be there. So he turned from a king's, so he said, how did he evolve? He turned from a king's son to a peasant whose mother was just raped in a village and nobody wants him. So he turned into a completely untouchable from up here. And I just said, Henry can play anything. So we stuck to it. So that's how the character changed. Now you remember, but the one that you read was King's Son.
Yeah, very, very much a different kind of thing. And it gives it power when a man who shouldn't step up to the plate does. And doesn't only step up to the plate, but hits a home run. And as opposed to being, oh, well, of course, he's a demigod.
Yes, and not destined to. That's another problem that I have, because I just think it just means, what if you aren't destined for greatness? It's dreadful. So I just said, no, I want a Joe Schmo that rises to the plate, not a guy who's destined to do it.
Was that difficult as an actor adjusting to that? I mean, how late in the day were the changes?
Ooh, some things were on the day?
On the day. It was all the time, and he was so trusting, because it would change completely. But for me, the only time that I went to the studio was about 3 months before we shot, that I just said, we picked Henry when he was a king's son, because unfortunately you look at him and he looks like a king's son. I said, now you have made him into, like an untouchable, and he's not that. But the reason you have to know is that he can act that person. So don't go around saying, but it's the guy looks like a king's son and he's doing this, which we still had problems. Every now and then they saw the dailies, then police will come and say, well, the king's son wouldn't sleep on such an old bed. I said, he's not the king's son anymore. There were different pages.
That changed.
That changed long ago. So it was changing all the time.
I've always believed that in Greek mythology, those were our first superheroes. Mm-hmm. How has that helped you now transitioning to play Superman?
The only help it's really provided is in the physical aspect. Going through that once is a great preparation for going through it the second time, obviously. You do it in a very different way, with a very different approach method, and you're prepared for the hardships that it provides. You're very right in saying that the Greek heroes were the original superheroes, and I think with this story, it's a little different because Theseus is an ordinary man. Yes, he does some extraordinary things, but he's just an ordinary man. In the other job, he's very far from ordinary.
Have you seen the suit? The Superman suit?
What suit?
Your suit. The suit. Have you seen it? Tried it on?
I have. It's fantastic.
It's fantastic. Okay. All right.
Does it fit?
Yeah, does it fit?
Good. Not anymore.
I think we're done.
Cool.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Guys.
Good luck.
Chin chin.
Thank you.